Hi, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of joybaking.com. Today we're going to make toffee bars, and this is what they look like. This is a 3-layer bar. On the bottom we have a buttery, crisp brown sugar shortbread. Cover that with a layer of chocolate, and then on top of that a sprinkling of toffee bits. You know, they kind of taste to me like butter crunch toffee, but a lot less work. So the first thing that you will need to do is to preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 180 degrees Celsius. And then you will need an 8-inch square pan that's 20 centimeters. I've lined mine with foil, and you could use parchment paper as well, but kind of have an overlap, so then it was kind of like handles, so once we bake them, we can just kind of take them out, and then it's easier to cut them into squares. So, to make the batter, if you have a stand mixer like I have here, use your paddle attachment. You could use a hand mixer, or really when you make shortbread, you don't want to get a lot of air into the batter. We're really just mixing all the ingredients together. So you could just use a bowl with a wooden spoon or a spatula. So the first thing that you will need to is a half a cup, 113 grams of butter. I'm using unsalted. You could use salted if you wanted to, and then just leave out the salt called for in the recipe. Have your butter at room temperature. And then it's brown sugar shortbread, so we're going to add half a cup, 100 grams of light brown sugar. If you're using, like if you weigh 100 grams, but if you're using a measuring cup, just pat your brown sugar down because it's very soft. And then if you want, this is optional, you could add 3/4 of a teaspoon, 3 grams of pure vanilla extract, but really that's for flavoring, so you don't really need it, so you can just leave that out. So now, all I'm going to do is have my mixer on about medium speed, and I'm just going to mix everything together. Okay, so just get the bowl scrape the sides and bottom, make sure everything's mixed together, and then shortbread really, butter, sugar, flour. I mean, you can add like the vanilla, but in the basic form, butter, sugar, flour. So in a separate bowl, I have 1 cup, 130 grams of all-purpose flour, plain flour, and I'm adding just 1/4 of a teaspoon, 1 gram of, I'm using a fine kosher salt. You could use a table salt, and I'm just going to mix that. With a wire whisk, you just use your finger for it. Like I said, if you use salted butter, I would just leave that salt out. And then we're just going to dump that in and have your mixer on low speed. And I'm just going to beat this just until, I don't want a solid ball of dough. It's just going to start to form clumps and then stop. Okay, starting to come together, so just stop. And that is our shortbread, which is the hardest part of this recipe, just making the shortbread. So just give it a stir, make sure you get all the flour mixed in. And then we're just going to put it into our pan. Okay, and then I'm just using my, just kind of distribute it, make it a little easier. I'm just going to press it down, pat it down into an even layer. I mean, you could use a spoon, offset spatula. I just use my fingers. Okay, so you can usually tell just by putting your hand whether it's an even layer, so just make sure it is. And then what I like to do is take a fork and then just lightly prick the shortbread. It helps prevent it from puffing up during baking, because we are going to bake our shortbread off just like this. So everyone's oven is a little different. I'm going to say about 20 minutes. I do rotate my pan front to back about halfway through, get an even bake. Sometimes your oven has hot spots. What you're looking for, you can really tell your shortbread is done just by color. You want it a golden brown color. Of course, the longer you bake shortbread, the more crisp it will be. So that's why we want a nice golden brown. About 20 minutes. So leave your oven turned on and put your pan on a wire rack. Doesn't that look gorgeous? Beautiful golden brown. Smells wonderful. So now, as soon as it comes out of the oven, shortbread's really hot, take 1 cup, which is about 180 grams of chocolate chips. You can use semi-sweet, bittersweet. You could even use like milk chocolate chips, and just scatter them over the top. You could also take your favorite like chocolate bar, like about 6 ounces, 180 grams, and just chop that up and put that over the top. And if you don't want to use chocolate chips, whatever you like. And then what we're going to do, once I sprinkle all these, we're just going to put our pan back into the oven for like 1 minute. Just until our chocolate chips start to melt. So I would say about a minute. Okay. So turn your oven off now. So you can see they're starting to melt. So I'm just taking an offset spatula. You just use a spoon just as easily. Just spread out the chocolate. These are just so good. Really nice. I mean, they're great any time of the year, but I think this would be particularly good at Christmas time. And they freeze really well, so you can make them ahead. Or, you know, really, they store really well. You can probably store them a couple weeks, room temperature in the fridge. Okay. Okay, looks good. It's hot, so I'm not gonna, normally I would scrape that off. And then for the top layer, these are toffee bits, which is really like kind of crumbled up caramels, hard caramels. You can buy toffee bits. They come in a bag just like chocolate chips. And if you go to the baking aisle of your grocery store, if you live in the States, they're right there with the chocolate chips. So, I mean, if you live in a place that doesn't sell toffee bits, you could, I'm just going to sprinkle them right over the hot chocolate. If you could take some hard caramel and then just, you know, crush them like this. Or, you know, what would also be good is, I think, if you took some peanuts and kind of crushed them into little bits, that would be good. Or even any type of nut, like almonds, pecans, walnuts would be another choice. Or you could even leave off the top layer and just have, you know, brown sugar shortbread with a chocolate topping. That's good too. Can you tell I like them? So there's options if you can't find these. Because I don't know whether they sell them outside the States. Okay. Now what we're going to do once we finish this, we're just going to let them, so have your pan on a wire rack, and we're just let them cool right down to room temperature. So that's what I'm going to do. And then when we come back, we will cut them into squares and try one. So I let the toffee bars cool down to room temperature. So we'll just peel back the foil. The chocolate's mainly set up. So at this point, I like to cut them into whatever size bars you want. You need a sharp knife. And if you want to do, I usually do 4 cuts so I get 16 bars, but I'll let you decide how big or small you want to cut yours. So, and then in between, to get a nice cut, as you can see, lots of chocolate on there. I like to just wipe off my knife. And I'll just, so this is what you want to do. Cut them all, wiping your knife in between. And then once you cut your bars, what you need to do, because the chocolate is still quite soft, I like to cut them now so the chocolate doesn't crack. And then what I do, once I cut them into the bar, I put this into the refrigerator. And that way the chocolate will harden up. And then you can finish like separating them. And then you get a nice clean bar. And with these, I think they're best if you let them sit overnight before you eat them. Because that way the flavors, the chocolate softens and the flavors all kind of mingle together. And that's how I like them. I mean, you could have one the day it's made, but so I made these a couple days ago, and there we have it. You have the shortbread on the bottom, chocolate, and the toffee bits. So, and as you can see, nice and set now. And the good thing about letting them sit at least overnight, when you first make them, if I had one right now, the shortbread would be really quite crisp. And then you have the chocolate in there. If you let them sit overnight, the shortbread softens a bit and everything kind of mingles. And wow, they're good. You have that wonderful brown sugar shortbread. Kind of has a toffee taste to it when you use the brown sugar instead of white in shortbread. And then the chocolate. I used I think about a 65% cocoa content. So leaning more towards the bittersweet, which I like because that offsets the sweetness of the shortbread and the toffee bits on top, which I really like, the crisp and crunchy flavor of those toffee bits. But like I said, I think peanuts would be really good, chopped up fine, or, you know, almonds, hazelnuts, pecans. Really, you could have some fun with this recipe and try different toppings, but they're really good. You could store them probably, like I said, probably a couple weeks, especially if you store them in the refrigerator. You can freeze them. They freeze excellent. So it's a good make ahead, especially for the Christmas season. So it's really a bar that you should try. And until next time, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of JoyBaking.com.